Hello, this is Pastor Matthew Woods from Grace Lutheran Church in New Albany, Indiana, and this is the weekly devotion for September 30th, 2024. Today's title, The Opportunity in Conflict. Now, I remember a story that Dave Ramsey used to tell, some version of it at least that I remember. I'll probably get it wrong, but it goes something like this. There were two sisters who lived in the same house who both needed an orange for separate baking recipes. The only problem, there was only one orange and there was not enough time to go to the store before their guests arrive. As these sisters did from time to time, they fought. And in this case, they fought about this orange. Much time was spent trying to tell the other why their recipe was more important than the other, deserved the orange, and so on. Emotions ran high and tensions filled the room. These things happen. In time, a revelation finally changed everything, the course of the entire thing. Turns out, one of the sisters needed the orange in the middle, while the other one needed the peels for her recipe. Not sure how that works, but that's what she needed. Now, my point in sharing all this today is that we can so easily turn just about anything into a good old-fashioned fight. And let me tell you, there is one of those in Acts chapter 15, verses 36 through 41. And it reads like this. Sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preach the word of the Lord and see how they're doing." Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with them, but Paul did not think that it was wise to take him because he had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in the work. They had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and left, commended by the believers to the grace of God. He went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. Paul and Barnabas had a disagreement, but we are also told that it was sharp. In other words, it was intense. Folks, they had a good old-fashioned fight. Can you imagine that in a church? Surely not. It was emotional, it was heated, and Paul didn't believe that John Mark was up to being part of the new team because he had blown it in the mission to Pamphylia. Barney saw that John Mark still had potential and thought that he needed a second chance to get it right. These events are mentioned in Acts chapter 15 because they are relevant to how two missionary teams went out instead of one for that second round, even though there was this disagreement. More ground in the end was covered, and that was a good thing. But beginning in Acts chapter 15, I hope to begin a series that addresses conflict, at least in small degree. To start off with, I want to talk about what did not happen with Paul and Barnabas. First, it was not said that it became a competition where one or both rallied supporters within the church to their side in order to pressure the other one to give in. Typically, today, too many Christians fall for this, too quickly turning the argument into a contest and then assembling a huddle of people who would agree with us and help us. Such things usually heighten emotions to each side as each side tries to talk themselves into this anguish and why the other side is wrong. From there, it becomes like a campaign fueled by emotions. Vote for me. Well, the whole thing's a very decisive approach. It does not really work. But that's what often happens. We get on our social media and our friends, and we start rallying support. So Paul and Silas don't do that, or Paul and Barnabas don't do that. They simply talk it out and come to an agreement. Secondly, Paul and Barnabas did not make it all about themselves. This disagreement did not become an issue of who was better, as it once did with the disciples, say, at the Last Supper. We remember how Jesus had to regularly demonstrate that being a follower of Jesus was not a an opportunity for sitting at the high places, the right or the left in heaven. So the disagreement in Acts chapter 15 was sharp in this case because there was at stake the mission of the church. That's why they were both passionate. Both Paul and Barnabas were very much in agreement about the mission of the church and wanted the best for it. They disagreed on how to do that. Paul and Barnabas didn't stress their personal reputations or their own authority or their personal importance. That's not what they emphasized. Instead, they clearly defined the problem and came up with a mutual solution, one that would work. Now, I would propose that along with this, one would look at conflict as something not to be avoided, mainly because no one can go without conflict. You got to learn from conflict. We got to learn from it here. So to go without conflict, that's unrealistic. I think, though, that conflict is an opportunity for something gained. So I'm going to use Acts 15 again to do this as I name up a couple thoughts. Now, the first thing is that conflict can become a huge opportunity to find out, to identify what's really important to us. John Mark introduced, or rather abandoned, his place at Pamphylia, but Barnabas was aware of Mark's Christian character and believed in that. By the way, this is the same Barnabas that believed in Paul, advocated for Paul shortly after his conversion, and introduced him to the followers of Jesus in Acts chapter 9, to a very skeptical church, by the way. Now, we're not told why Mark did what he did, but his cousin Barnabas knew his potential, forgave him, and discipled him to become really a great worker for the church. The result even is that years later, Paul would acknowledge this, calling him a fellow worker in Philemon 1:24. And near the end of Paul's life, Paul would send a request to Timothy, a Roman, while he's in his prison, get Mark and bring him with you because he is helpful to me in my ministry, 2 Timothy 4:11. See, Paul eventually recognized that Mark matured, that he came to a point where he was finally able to do the ministry properly. But clearly he needed more training or something, and he got that help, right? Not only for Mark, but it benefited Paul in the process and the mission of the church. So in the long run, this turned out to be a very good decision by Barnabas. Now, if we find ourselves becoming emotionally invested in a conflict, perhaps something important needs more attention in us or in another. Emotions signal such things. What's important to us, we react to. Along with this, we may want to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person while conflict is going on and ask what might be important to them. The whole thing becomes an opportunity if we can learn what this thing might be, this important thing. Finding out what is valued is very important in getting to the clarity of the situation, what's really the issue. It may not bring resolution right away, but it is a good beginning point because the focus has a chance to shift from feelings to an intelligent discussion of a solution, because now we know what's really going on. So that's one thing. It's an opportunity to know what the important things are. Another reason conflict may be an opportunity is that it can lead to a greater appreciation of those around us, the people we love. Paul and Barnabas knew that it was important to distinguish the person from the real issue, right? One issue can totally skew a relationship, by the way. That same issue can make a relationship stronger. That's what we're after. While Paul and Barnabas disagreed sharply about Mark, the failure of Mark did not become Mark's identity. The fight did not make Paul the enemy of Barnabas. Barnabas took Mark under his wing, and Paul agreed to let Mark rebuild his trustworthiness under Barnabas. Paul trusted the plan because he trusted Barnabas, right? And in time, Paul grew to appreciate Mark as much as he did Barnabas. So conflict is an opportunity to build an appreciation for those around us. If our focus, by the way, is to win a contest, we lose on this. The moment a conflict instead of a relationship is the emphasis, there's a problem. Remember who we're talking to, right? Remember who we're talking with, a spouse, a child, a friend, or even myself with you. Someone we care about is on the other side of that conversation. They're not our enemies. They're fellow Christians, family, whatever. Start with the relationship and then assume the best. That's important, so important. Put the best construction on your words. Don't assume the worst. Don't let your mind go to the negative about that person, even if they are resistant to your explanation or your assessment of the issue. Place the matter into the Lord's hands, and know that there's a promise, at least in doing so, that there's a chance, there's an opportunity of reconciling and getting to a solution with the person you're disagreeing with because of that grace. And as with Paul and Barnabas, it may not be something we agree on, but there is a solution maybe that can be worked out. Finally, ask how we can honor the Lord in this. That's probably the biggest thing, in my opinion. Every disagreement has a chance to grow us in faith and to honor the Lord, especially between two Christians. If we seek to honor the Lord, we go a long way to avoiding making the matter worse by what we have said or what we have done. Sometimes when emotions run high, we may even say, like Jesus, Father, forgive them, for right now they don't know what they're doing. If our one aim, if this is all we do, if we aim towards honoring the Lord, then we may have a better chance to remember the deep grace and the forgiveness that we already possess, that we are already in a fellowship, that we don't want anything to break with that other person, that Jesus has established. We have that in the Lord. So that's what we're really chasing here in the end. So we begin our topic today with Paul and Barnabas, brothers in the Lord. Now, conflict can be a huge opportunity in the hands of the Lord. Conflict among Christians, and that's who we're talking about in this series, has a greater chance as an opportunity when we slow down things like competition and thinking only about ourselves. But if we are seeking the kingdom of God and his righteousness in our conflicts, just maybe everything else will be added to us as well, everything we need. And out of it will come something good and productive. Something good is possible if that is our goal, to seek God's kingdom in any given conflict. And that's always where it has to start. Paul and Barnabas did that, even though it was a sharp conversation, you might say. We can do it too. And so I pray that this is helpful to you as we begin this topic, and I pray that as we go forward, this series will equip you and help you with conflict resolution. Obviously, we won't scratch and deal with everything, but we're going to try to do our best to give you something that's helpful. In the meantime, the Lord bless you this week, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.